Welcome to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco, bringing you interviews with industry experts and regular folks who tested the job search waters and succeeded, and strategies to tell your story and land you job interviews in 60 days, guaranteed. Here's your host, Virginia Franco.
I am delighted to welcome my next guest, Philip Spizale. He is the Chief Sales Officer at REVA Inc., which is the world's largest international air ambulance and medical flight transport services company. In this role, he manages a top-producing international sales force, and he's responsible for all sales strategy, business development initiatives, marketing campaigns, and account management activity. Before joining REVA back in 2016, though, he spent his entire career at one company. He worked his way up the ladder over the course of 20 years and eventually became a member of the sales leadership team at Concentra, a leading workplace healthcare provider. Overall, Philip has developed and implemented marketing and sales strategies, defined key selling propositions, and managed complex sales cycles. He is well respected for recruiting, mentoring, and inspiring teams. I am super excited to talk with you because a lot of people that I come across are faced with the same challenge that you are, which is having been at the same place for a long time and having to sort of test the job waters out for the first time. So thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure, Virginia. Thanks for having me.
So I just introduced you and gave a synopsis, but I'd love to hear from you. Can you sort of walk us through your career history as you see it?
Yeah, sure. And there's a piece that we left out at the beginning that I've found recently to actually be pretty important, and that's right out of school quite some time ago. I won't say how long ago. But
20th century.
The first job that I had was with a rental car company as part of their management trainee program, renting cars out of airports in a couple of states across the country. And that was my first introduction to direct sales. And it was a great platform for me looking back because it gave me the basics of a sales process. So, how do I identify a need? How do I satisfy that need with whatever it is I'm selling? And then the client doesn't realize that they have a need. How do I educate them on the value of all that? So after a couple of years there, honing my skills in the rental car industry, I took that experience and pursued an opportunity in healthcare delivery, selling physician services within a small urgent care medical center practice, which later became Concentra, as you mentioned in that wonderful introduction. Then over the next 20 years with Concentra, the organization grew from a handful of centers to over 400 nationwide. I'd like to think that I contributed to that growth. And at that point, I took a look around and became really curious, really interested in the modern healthcare marketplace, and subsequently found my way to my current role with REVA.
Okay, so well, that answers my next question. What propelled you to make a career change? I mean, you'd had a very successful run at Concentra, and you've been a part of so much of their growth story. What made you say, let me look elsewhere?
It's a great question. I was one of the only people that I knew, still am, to be honest, that had been with an organization for 20 plus years. I'd watched colleagues and friends move through their careers and into new and exciting positions that seemed to be more suitable each time they did it, each time they made a move. And so for the first time in my career, I started to feel maybe a little bit stagnant as a result of that. I wasn't unhappy at all, and I still felt as though I contributed in a really positive way, but there was something missing. And maybe it was a challenge, maybe it was the hidden aspiration to run my own company-wide sales organization. Whatever it was, I wanted to at least explore what was out there and test the waters. So I did just that.
Okay. And in testing the waters, what was it that made you decide this is the direction I want to go in? Because you've now worked in two different industries, but you really could go in a number of different directions.
Yeah, at the time, I had no specific direction. I've been doing the same thing for so long with the same organization. I knew it had to be in healthcare, some type of healthcare delivery system or healthcare services or healthcare support, but I wasn't certain, where within that industry I should live next. But what I did know is that whatever direction that I went in, It would be really well thought out. I would do my research. I'd find a part of the industry that was evolving and showed a lot of future promise. And so that was a loose guide to the direction, I suppose.
Okay. That sounds like you did a lot of homework on that topic. Can you walk us through what were the steps that you took to make that leap into a new organization?
At first, after spending 20 plus years with an organization, so many questions come into your mind as to how you're going to approach this next step. So
Sure.
I would just apply what I knew from interviewing and hiring dozens, maybe even 100 or more people over the years in my past positions. I knew I had to perform some type of inventory of a skill set. What am I good at? What's going to be transferable? I hadn't actually had to sit down and think about that in quite some time. So what did I look for? A question I asked myself. What did I look for when hiring someone into my team, into my group?
Okay.
That really offered me guidance in terms of the change that needed. Even the cliche stuff, I'm a people person, right? But how do I say that? How do I say that in an appropriate way that doesn't shut down the interview?
You turn the tables on yourself.
That's exactly right. Yeah, look,
Okay.
after 20 years in good standing at the same firm, any change that I was going to have to make here, it had to be a step up. So I knew I had to bring the right game to the table on any given day, and I had to plan for that.
Okay. So what was your biggest challenge during the process?
Biggest challenge, probably figuring out what was attractive about a 20-year career with the same company. What's interesting about that? I certainly didn't have the right answers for that. So I had to look to a number of external resources to figure that out. And luckily I talked to a lot of the right people. They offered some great advice, some great guidance, and it led me to where I am today. So obviously it was the right advice.
Right. So being able to sort of do a strong overview of your career and pull out the right highlights that were transferable to this next role, is that what you talked about? Maybe I'm not understanding that right.
No, I think you're on the right path. I think it's what's in the skill set, what's in the toolbox that is transferable. And I'd offer my opinion on that, but it needed to be in someone else's opinion, not just mine, because it was other people that were interacting with me to see if there was a good fit. And so anything from your resume build that fits today's job search, social media presence, networking, there's so many options out there. Which ones are going to get me the best result? That was challenging. It was challenging to navigate.
So it sounds like you established a sounding board for all of this.
Yeah. So you'd be surprised how many people, 20-year career within the same organization, have been challenged with similar circumstances and are willing to offer up their learnings, their experience, and that was very, very helpful.
That's true. You have to be willing to ask, and it was so, I feel like my sense is that sometimes people are too nervous to make that ask, but doing so just is incredibly valuable.
I completely agree, and that was the initial difficulty for me, was just that, asking the question, asking for a little bit of help and guidance.
Okay. So in terms of sort of the day-to-day or week-to-week, what did your job search look like? Because you had a full-time job. How'd you do it?
Yeah, true. I current responsibility was something that I was still committed to, and I wanted to do a good job. So I had to allow myself downtime, I wouldn't say daily, but at the very least weekly or every couple of days to look at progress and schedule follow-up or even schedule interviews. And there was some practice that needed to happen in all of this to get ready to go out there and talk about what I do and how I do it, and why I would be a good fit for whatever role I was pursuing. And looking back, there was probably a number of positions on the front end of my search that I wouldn't have considered, but I needed practice, and it was good practice. But then a few months in, I only accepted those opportunities that I was truly interested in.
Okay. Well, probably getting that practice at the ones that you were not, those that you were super interested, gave you the practice to be able to do well in the ones that really did matter to you.
I think so. I would say it definitely helped. It sharpened the pitch to a pretty well-delivered.
It shook out the nerves a little bit probably as well. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So you did not have a super long journey, but what surprised you most about it? What did you not expect?
What was so surprising were the number of outlets, the resources, and the technology available to get yourself out there. It's amazing. Still amazing. And I think since my job search a little under 2 years ago, so much has changed since then. But you have to be ready, and you have to be able to share information now in a number of different ways. It's not just a resume anymore. boards. I had mentioned this earlier, social media profiles, electronic bios, all of those things. There's a lot to consider, and that was most surprising to me, just how many different modes of messaging exists out there now.
So what modes do you take advantage of? Because not every mode is suitable for every role.
Right. I think the transfer of snippets of information through electronic bios that are generated within social media profiles or social media platforms, fastest way to facilitate a deeper discussion, and not just in a job search, but in conveying a message around your organization's productivity or your organization, whatever it is you're selling. To get the message out there through a social media platform is absolutely the most efficient way to do it if you know how to do it the right way.
So you use LinkedIn. What else did you use?
LinkedIn, a little bit on Facebook, and you talk about all the job boards that are out there. I was very selective in terms of identifying the right type of recruiting firms that were engaged in those job boards and the specific industry types that tended to pull information from those job boards.
Okay, all right, that's a really good point, because the job boards there's a lot of people on there, and not everyone might make sense for your job search. So really doing your homework around that, I think, offers a good return. So what advice can you give someone looking to make a jump into your industry?
Don't be afraid. Don't be scared. What we do in this industry, what REVA does, is the marriage between two really highly regulated industry types, aviation, healthcare. Marrying those together can be a real challenge to do it all the right way and maintain compliance day in and day out. But when you do figure out how to do it consistently, it's extremely gratifying. Healthcare in general, depending upon what sector you're in, can be an extremely gratifying career. We get to save lives every day, and how cool is that? That's just a really cool thing to get up and do.
But you're right, the compliance aspect of things really does intimidate people.
Yeah, I think it can, especially a niche market related to aviation. Healthcare is one thing, but I think healthcare is more widely understood. You throw in an airplane that flies at 35,000, 40,000 feet, and you provide healthcare within that airplane, and that's pretty complex and can be a little scary.
Yeah, no, I agree. To take that out a bit further, do you have any advice for someone looking to make a jump to a different industry than where they were before? Even though this was still healthcare, this was a big jump for you.
It was. I can sum that up pretty simply in that make sure whatever industry you're moving to, whatever the next opportunity is, make sure there's a story to tell about the company that you're interested in. Have someone tell you that story first, not just the history, not just about what the company does, but the story of the why and the how and the who and why it's important. And then ask yourself if you can listen to that. Can you listen to that story? Does it sound good to you? If you don't identify with that and it doesn't have some meaningful impact on you, then maybe that job isn't the right one.
And how do you advise people to hear that story? Is that something that you asked for during those initial interviews, or did you uncover that through doing online research?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, and it's a slippery slope in terms of asking for that story. You have to know when to ask for it, and you have to ask for it in the right context. I think during the recruiting process is the best time to do it. Make sure that whoever is offering your personal brand up to a particular hiring manager, make sure that hiring manager knows on the front end that that's an expectation of the conversation you're about to have. I really want to hear the story about your company the way you would tell it if someone walked up to you on the street and asked you what you do. And usually they were willing to do so. I know I would be as a hiring manager, because it's important that whatever I have to say resonates with the people that I bring onto my team. So you pick your spots, but
go ahead.
I was going to say, you pick your spots that you'll know when it's right to ask for that story to be told. But I'll put it to you this way. Don't accept a position until you hear the story.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It has to resonate with you. It's interesting what you say about sort of setting the expectation that that's a demand of yours, and working with recruiters that you need to have someone convey that to you. My sense is that a lot of people are afraid to ask for anything that meets their needs during, asking that of the recruiter.
Right. I would think that I know from sitting on the other side of the desk that to me, that would command a level of respect, and that this individual is taking the job search very seriously, and they want to know what we're all about before they make a choice to make a career change or join our organization. So I would appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's a two-way street in making sure that you're a right fit for them and they think you're a good fit for, and vice versa. So that's a great way to do that. So thank you. So fun question. What is the thing that you think that might surprise people about you? What were people surprised about during these interviews that you went on and during this job hunt?
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for keeping it to that portion of...
Yeah, we don't need to go beyond.
Yeah. Gosh,
unless you want to share, that's okay.
Look, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't think there's much surprising about me. Maybe that I wouldn't allow my sales organization to sell something that you just don't need. If I can't make your life better or we can't contribute in a meaningful way to whatever it is you're doing, then we walk away. And I think that's probably a surprise for your typical salesperson out there.
Yeah. Surprise but a welcome relief from the people that you're for your direct, no doubt. It's very refreshing.
I'm glad you see it that way. I hope everyone else does.
There you go. So what is next for you? You joined almost 2 years ago. What are you excited about? What do you see as coming up on the horizon?
What's next? I'm right in the middle of the what's next for me right now. With REVA, there's so much to accomplish, and there's a marketplace that I've been lucky enough to discover that has a real appetite for change, for positive change, for evolution, and I'm really excited about being a part of that. So I'll be doing this for quite some time.
Gosh, I have to admit that I did not even realize this was an industry until you told me, till I discovered that you were working there, and I thought, what are the possibilities? Could it be, healthcare and space transport down the road, or all sorts of other kinds of ways to make people's lives better?
Virginia, you may have just given me the next amazing concept for our industry.
Okay. There you go. Well, Philip, thank you so much for joining us. You've given us some really unique insight. And the fact that you lived through this job search journey and came out on the other end with such success, I think is really inspirational. So thank you.
Virginia, thank you. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
You've been listening to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco. To learn more about storytelling strategies to catch the eye of today's SKIM online readers, hiring and decision makers, go to www.virginiafrancoresumes.com.